Perfect. All right. Welcome those who have joined us so far here today. We'll give everyone a couple of minutes to hop on in. Everyone's probably grabbing coffee, coming off from a meeting, something like that. We are excited to have everyone join us today for Ryan and Josh's presentation here. Just some housekeeping before I pass it along. Any questions that come up, go ahead and drop them within the Q&A. Henry and I are going to be going through and monitoring just for anything that we feel might be best answered kind of in the flow. So we'll go ahead and bring those up to Ryan and Josh and pass it off to them to answer when we do. Otherwise, we plan to have probably a couple minutes at the end for any questions that maybe you want to hold off on, kind of do more of a get answered at the end. We'll have a little bit of time for that as well. We'll also obviously are recording, so this will be available on demand if you can't stay for the full time here today. So with that, again, happy to answer any questions as they come up, but I'll pass it along to Ryan and Josh for today's presentation.
Thank you, Dom. So welcome, everyone. My name is Ryan Nelson. I run our solution engineering team at Openprise. Happy for you guys to be joining today. We're going to talk about plugging the PLG leak and unlocking that enterprise revenue. What we're really excited about is having Josh Hill here today to talk about that perspective. Many people probably know Josh from his immense amount of participation in many communities, including that of Marketo community. Right now, Josh acts as the VP of Client Services at Atumos, but he's had over a 25-year track record in this world of building world-class platforms. Josh, if you'd like to speak more about Atumos and get us going.
Sure. Just briefly, Atumos is one of the oldest Marketo shops, as well as a premier GTM operations and technology agency, and we work with a lot of B2B firms of all sizes to build out the right platforms, the architecture, working in PLG as well as enterprise motions. All right. Well, help to go in the right direction, yeah. There we go. Okay. So what I'm going to talk about today is how to leverage Marketo in your stack for product-led sales, product-led growth, product, and as well as with sales-led motions. And I want to compare and contrast a little bit about what we mean by that so that you can start from the strategy and work your way into the technology. So many of us know B2B sales motions, right? We have PLG or freemium. Typically, you're going to find that in the e-commerce or a SaaS situation, especially for startups trying out new technologies and workflows. And the motion is drive people to sign up. They're single users typically. You're going to do self-service, not a lot of humans involved, and you're focused on credit card swipes, as well as these, pirate metrics are. And what you'll find is, right, the growth team handles that, or the product team is handling that, even at later stage SaaS companies. And, you might have a larger SaaS company that's more focused on mid-market or building out teams, right? Lucidchart's a great example of this, right? You might sign up for one reason or another. You have a user, then you end up with 5 or 6 people on the same domain, and someone or a workflow decides, hey, those people should be on a better or bigger plan for us, and that would help them expand their features and capabilities. So someone will put you in a journey and encourage you to do more self-service upgrades, or maybe even have a salesperson reach out briefly and get higher ASP for your company, and go on from there. Now, a lot of us have worked with Marketo, especially around enterprise sales motions, right? We've got MQLs, SQLs, we've got complex deals and workflows. Many salespeople are involved. That could be coming up through users from your SaaS product. It could also be, your purely enterprise play. And this requires much more complex data integrations, data flows. You're tracking the funnel even more closely in different ways. And both your product and your GTM flow are probably require more security, more data linkages, right? You're really trying to build out enterprise or department-wide situations. Now, this can happen because of expansion of the feature set, expansion of users, what users are demanding from you, and it gets in a nice circle. Now, when I work in-house or with clients, typically I see a lot of misalignments around this. And you really have to work with people to resolve them, right? Technology does not solve misaligned GTM workflows, right? Going up market from your PLG flow is the biggest way to break the system, but also going back and saying, hey, we're going to go from enterprise as well as have a PLG function. That can also break your stack. And it's really because other teams are getting out ahead of each other, right? So start with the strategy. And what I like to do, and I'll talk about how to solve this in a moment, but typically this is happening because investors, executives are pushing forward. And that's good, but product and growth become separated out. MOPS become separated out. So maybe not everybody's working at the same pace, and certainly technology might be out of the pace. In your workflows, sometimes what you'll see is people equating users to MQLs or even PQLs, product qualified leads. There's a pressure to go fast, so you don't really get a chance to kind of reflect upon what kind of experience you want to have internally as well as externally for the customer. And you're probably ignoring a lot of high propensity users, people more likely to buy than others, because you haven't been able to build a model out yet. All right. In terms of people, all right, maybe you're hiring lots of sales folks, maybe you're not. And that needs to be thought through across the different swim lanes. Now, in the technology, I'm sure we've all seen this at one point or another. You come in, there's a Marketo, user data is not sent to Marketo. Or worse, you're getting all of the user data, but not the user event data. So you don't know how to trigger campaigns. Or maybe it's flooding in Salesforce and Marketo, and it's clogging everything. And you need to figure that out because Marketo is going to charge you a lot of money, right? And there's lots of different ways to think through this problem, but you do need a couple of days to do that. Typically, how I approach this is we have a workshop, right? Everybody gets together, whether hopefully it's small group, but it could be 40 people who are across the different departments who bring their perspective and their ownership of that particular piece to the table. And you really need to run out what happens every single day in the course of an entire year, from before the person even signs up to offboarding. And I always say offboarding, even though people don't like to talk about churn. Because if you think about, maybe you're trying to get off the cable company, all the hoops you have to go through to cancel, people have gotten sued over this, and just make it a relatively pleasant experience and think through what that experience should be, because people will actually come back because they may not like the competitor that they went to, and they'll come back in 3 months and they'll remember how you treated them. Now, as you go through this workflow, look at all the different departments, the different swim lanes, the handoff points, and the process design. And I did a talk a couple of times last year about Six Sigma approach to the marketing funnel. And this is where your process maps, your control charts, you have to understand not just externally where the drop-off points are, right? But also internally. And I'll give you an example. I was in a workshop, we got 40 people across the company. Finally had the right people in the right place to map all of this out and provide data points around, what happens when we do phone porting? How many people go through that? What's the drop-off rate? Why do people get upset there, right? And let's figure out how to make that, instead of X percent, Y percent, so that we're obtaining more money, people are happier, and it's going more smoothly through the process. Then you can talk about the technical setup, how you want to approach the data flows to Marketo, et cetera. Now, this is a very simple PLG to PLS system, right? But here are all the pitfalls you're going to experience, right? Product, event, live in the product. You don't see them anywhere else. Lead scoring is still based on 2011 feelings and thoughts, where you have 10 points for this webinar, and that's an MQL, right? Doesn't tell you much about their propensity to buy. Users are become MQLs, and salespeople jump on that, workflows jump on that, and the person was just looking around, right? Is that really the best use of everyone's time? Is that helping and building value for the user, or is they're just annoying them? Same thing with upsell and churn risk. There's not a clear score, probably not getting flagged unless there's a CSM who kind of knows the people involved. And if we send people over to sales is probably jumping on people, users, MQLs. Maybe they're digging in the database for people, but they're not building and working with qualified buying groups, right? Especially for enterprise. So what does alignment really look like, right? Again, strategy, process, people, technology. Really understand the motion you're going through. I won't read off the slide here, but For example, product-led growth, there's a self-service component, so your automation has to be really good and really focused on that customer experience, right? We're mostly getting freemium user signups. The product team, the pricing team have decided on what you can get, right? I've signed up for great products, and if you have the free version, maybe you only get 2 or 3 uses out of it before you get pushed to pay, right? Your KPIs are mostly focused on signups, daily active users. What's that free to user to paid user motion look like? Are you bugging them all the time in the app? Is it an email flow? Have you really built the value for someone? And probably what you have today, you have multiple data sets, you got multiple journey orchestration going on with Marketo, you've got Pindo, you got other tools, and you haven't really thought through a process, right? And you just certainly don't have any usage data that's driving most of these journeys. So in the future, and we'll go deeper into this, you want to have a CDP, a data warehouse. You want to think about real-time data streams or even omni-channel real-time personalization. Uh, and you want to have predictive models triggering journeys, which is in many ways almost the hardest part to get through. So to get there, you need to look at the 4-layer stack, which really enables the growth and scalability of your journey and all of the different data you need to collect to support executives. So we'll start at the bottom. It doesn't have to be the bottom, but it's the layer 1 is really your data layer. And it's interesting. Scott Brinker and his team came out with a similar version that's horizontal. So you just flip it and it's the same, right? Your focus is on getting that data right. And you're never going to have a single source of truth for anything, right? But you can have a data warehouse that draws on all of the different key things you need to have to drive these journeys as well as drive insights, right? And that's going to be connected through strict quality data orchestration system that's ingesting, throttling, transforming, and syncing the data in the right places at the right time. Third layer is that decision engine. Now, today it's popular to say AI. It can be any kind of model that you want it to be. Certainly, AI, machine learning, regression models can be a part of that and should be to drive good predictive understanding of who's more likely to buy, who's more likely to talk to sales, whether it's in a qualified buying team or just a single user, right? So that's going to decide which journey to push them into. Similarly, you'll still have business rules, deterministic rules that will have to be in place for regulatory concerns, for just how we want to do things. And then you'll have, a Tableau, Power BI as that insight layer as well to visualize that. Now, layer 4 is the action layer or the journey layer. That's going to be journey orchestration. How do you engage in the different channels that are available to you and the different assets? That is certainly an opportunity for Marketo to leverage APIs and its different capabilities across the different channels. And of course, people respond. And all that data comes back in, and you can continue to feed that loop and understand and modify your models. So if you're really interested in schematic views, this is a very, very simple version. Right? User does something in the app, the product database collects that, it gets pushed to a marketing data warehouse of some type, the insights engine, the CDP, and it's pushing triggers essentially back to Marketo and Salesforce where journeys happen, communications go back to the user, and the cycle begins. Now, if you like a more horizontal view, this is another way to look at it. You have different sources from both channels, third-party data, lead sources, other databases, and that's getting ingested into your data data orchestration engine, syncing, transforming, throttling, which is really important because if you hose Marketo with a whole bunch of data or Salesforce, they're going to have challenges, and that will get pushed into the data warehouse, and that data orchestration will help push that insight, those insights, those likelihoods to select journeys in the action layer. Now, I've noted Marketo has some kind of native functionality there around ads and web page personalization and, of course, email. But leveraging APIs in the ecosystem, you can do much, much more. Now, I'll briefly touch on object relationships because this could be a whole presentation. But it's important to connect all of the links together, right? And this is not a database schema exactly. Right? We're going to have data governance, good reference ISO data, company-wide unique IDs, which, believe it or not, often don't exist. And you're going to differentiate between users, leads, linking those people to buying teams and accounts. But really importantly, right, that user event data, the response data, and the lifecycle data. And I say response because a lot of people will say touch and when they really mean a response, right? We can only record when someone actually fills out a form, when someone clicks a link and which channel that came from, which asset they're responding to or offer, and how does that drive people through the life cycle? And that's really where you want to collect that data set, and that's going to drive your prediction engine. So with Marketo, right, I'm not going to go deep into workflows or anything like that, but let's talk a little bit about the technical considerations, right? As the data flows through your system, and Marketo is certainly a part of that, feeding that data warehouse, you're going to choose journeys based on some business rules, but also that probability revenue engine, right? And saying, hey, this person's a customer, we want to upsell them, or they're a churn risk and they're going to go through journey X. Or if we want to compare journey X and Y, which one leads to better revenue, we could do that, right? And we just have to make sure that all the data is there so that the system can choose the right journey for that person. And Marketo will be able to push out different communications and then help collect that response data.
Josh,
Now, yeah,
question for this one. And you'll mention here about like 365 workshop. When I look at this, a lot of people are probably capturing all of these sources or missing some of them. Is this journey like, is it an all or nothing? Or can they approach it like they have some of it connected and they're ready for that to get all the way through?
I would almost encourage you to connect what you have and start there, even if it's just a proof of concept and you're only focused on, say, like the onboarding journey.
Mhm.
Almost the worst thing you could do is promise all of these different journeys and try to get them stood up in a month because that will never happen. And then executives will move on from for various reasons, and you'll never get the backing to go beyond, one or two journeys. And that's true even just if you want to build a nurture.
Mhm.
Because the best situations I've had is where I say, okay, let's I can connect Marketo to the rest of the Adobe stack, for example, and I can select a smart list and say, hey, I want to adjust the website and I want to adjust the DMP ads based on whether it's not someone's a customer and they have a certain product. And I can push out those smart lists to the rest of the Adobe stack natively. I don't even have to do all this data warehouse stuff. Um, but you can, because eventually what you're going to want to do is select, groups of users, paid or unpaid, and push them to Marketo to select a particular journey, right? And
Mhm.
that's really where you can do that full orchestration as well as, have that across the different journeys. Different channels.
Yeah, not biting off just because you have 10 segments. Maybe you can just go 50-50 split first.
Yeah, and this definitely glosses over like, if we were going to have the data tables, throughout the company, I might only want to select, hey, I want to focus on onboarding first. I'm going to select the tables from the product usage area first and get those into the data warehouse and just have a good cadence of upgrading that over time rather than just trying to dump it all in at once.
Makes sense.
Anything else?
No,
No?
I look at this and I think of the PLG journey that most people go through where they may have already tried and have all this, or they're like, when you say workshop 360, they're like, we don't have the bandwidth to do that. Maybe I'm going to skip this. So it helps.
No, don't skip the workshop.
Yeah, not all or nothing.
No, the workshop you have to do, especially if you're in a situation where, maybe people are saying we should be doing omnichannel or we should do AI and or you're being pushed to do different kinds of GTM motions. That's great. We should move forward, but let's take a moment, whether it's a day or 2 days, to make sure we're pointed in the right direction and we have the right alignment of what we're going to do. Because anytime someone says MarTech is broken, it's almost always because the process has not matched what the business has asked for.
Fair enough. Thanks, Josh.
Yeah, of course. Um, now, I know there's been a lot of talk the last few years, Marketo can't do X, Y, Z. Um, I've been a part of that conversation too, and I think there's truth to that, but there's also um, a discussion that needs to be had. And that's why that going through that workshop and walking through the real needs is important because most B2B companies don't have 100 million records. That might be a concern for the throughput here. Um, some do, and that's certainly a consideration. And there are some really great things Marketo can do. that's really extensible. APIs, custom objects from Salesforce, custom objects you can create, um, bulk import and export, and some real-time APIs as well with webhooks, as well as just using the API or the launch point. The challenge here, and I think, if you're a real Marketo user for a long time, you understand what's working well here, is there are limitations on the per second API calls. It's well documented. Um, the payload is, often 1 MB. That may be okay. If you're updating huge data sets with usage data, right, there are limitations. You can pay for upgrades. Um, if you need more than, 10 custom objects, that might be possible, but you may want to really, really rethink, well, if I need that, have I structured my data well? Should I just be using the data warehouse to select journeys rather than putting that into Marketo? Because you can do a lot with the existing capabilities. It's just, is your requirement really that, or is it, something less, right? For example, people ask for real-time experiences. Yeah, Marketo can actually do that in most cases. The question is, do you really need that for the customer experience? Is your marketing team and you really working together to design what that should look like? Certainly, if you have a password activation, that should be in real time. That probably doesn't go through Marketo for lots of reasons. Um, but if someone signs up and needs to be an onboarding journey, you could probably do that within an hour or 15 minutes. Does it have to be in 3 seconds? Good question, right? Something to think about because Marketo can do certain things, but if you decide to flood it with 100 million updates in an hour, you're going to trigger the backlog queue. You're going to have other things. You're going to get bounced off because of limits, API limits. And then you're going to say, oh, Marketo can't do that. Well, a lot of systems probably can't do that, right? Salesforce has limits. So really think through what you experience want, and then the technical side is something to really think through before you move forward on that.
Awesome. Thanks, Josh. Well, I'll take over from here. Josh, I do find it funny knowing you're all the time you've been related to Marketo to hear you say almost that Marketo can't do it. Because I know how long you've been associated with that company and inside the community. So Josh laid out a great framework. As he laid out, there's multiple layers. It's probably people are putting the dots together that data orchestration, why are we here for that and why is it relevant, is kind of the idea of getting to where people really are, right? Getting to where you really are is probably, as the same way you said it, where you may be not connecting these dots, flooding them into the CRM, flooding them to the MAP. Today the data is kind of everywhere. And as I alluded to, maybe you weren't when I asked Josh, maybe you're not capturing all of this. But in many cases, it's really becomes like, how are you going to make it actionable? What happens if all these signals are delayed or you can't connect the information downstream, whether it's formatting or you're flooding it to different systems? The idea is taking something and continuing with that PLG momentum and not having point systems break or lack of these things being connected. Taking in that complexity, kind of addressing where parts are broken, making them the same, having that system of orchestration so that that experience is clean, getting stuff where you want it to be. Josh, if you can click ahead. One more here. Awesome. So it's funny because even internally in discussions, we know the pressure of why PLG makes sense. If your product, you spent the time, you thought about it, you realize there's a way to do a product-led motion on what you're doing. And people are like, why can't we just stand it up? Because oftentimes I see it in two ways. People already have a big enterprise product and there's a way to downplay it. And they figure, we have people that want to spend all this money at enterprise level. Why is it so hard to give it away for free? The product will tell the story, they'll just sell up, right? But oftentimes it's a lot of data, as Josh mentioned. You could be flooding that into your systems, and it's just not the same user experience, right? It's not the same exact product. This is a mandate we're really seeing, though, is people are like, I want enterprise leads. They need to be coming from PLG. This is going to be making us tons of revenue. And oftentimes, like, even if you get started, you maybe don't take that workshop approach, and you didn't even think about all the data you have. If you go ahead, Josh. So from that mandate, you end up in a place where we showed earlier the connecting all the dots into an orchestration system. But within that, even people have huge amounts of data. The people that already have PLG motions, that If you flood that all into your systems, it gets costly and can bog things down. So when it comes to trying to pick an orchestration system, you want to think of the idea of what it's going to be able to support you with. Still, as you can see here, bouncing off other systems, not having a single source where it's like highly dependent. And we're trying to take in a case where you can take from that free user, the freemium users, work them through a process on your own systems, through nurture and so forth, getting identity resolution, coming down, and eventually getting those cohorts. In this case, as Josh said prior, every system is going to have a role. And as he kind of went into is just because it can, maybe it shouldn't. Flooding those things in there can just kind of overwhelm, and you end up in a place where there is still disconnects when you're trying to associate later that you've taken my personal email. It wasn't Lucidchart, Josh, but when you said that before, at one time, I signed up for a free version of something. It turned out our marketing team already had it. I got a ping from our head of marketing and said, Ryan, why are you using one of our licenses? I was like, what? I use my Openprise login. What do you mean? So there are different experiences here where I immediately got upgraded rather than trying to treat me through a PLG experience. At least it wasn't them that yelled at me, but it was internal. You can go ahead and move ahead. So if we take a step back, the viewpoint is with PLG, it's rarely failing due to lack of data because we have all these systems, right? We have all the systems in place. Typically, if we're taking a PLG motion, probably even with or without the workshop that Josh says you definitely should do, I think the workshop's key to make it successful, but it's rarely because of lack of data. It's frequently failing because the data is not in an actionable format, getting to the places it's needing to be structured. And in turn, you're kind of driving experience as if it's an enterprise experience. You're not connecting the dots that are necessary to give them kind of that whole PLG experience. You said credit card swiped, easy thing. Eventually, I'm upgrading and it just feels natural. And the idea here, I think a lot of what Josh is hitting on is not about adding more tools. Yes, he's putting layers in there, but it's about connecting some of the ones you already have and using from what they're best at. Having that common orchestration layer is going to be key. Having that be something that is no code and easy to use probably simplifies things for you, but there's options out there. It's really what we're trying to do is to stop kind of reacting to the data or fixing little broken parts along the way by taking a workshop approach, by taking and looking, and you didn't have to have it all, as Josh said. But taking all that data and giving it that central place to be aggregated will help you be able to take action, whether it's in your MAP or when something makes it to your CRM, making sure there's logs of information in your warehouses and so forth. So, Josh, I'd love to see what you have next is the ideal workflow.
The very simple one. Yeah, right. We started before, didn't have the data we needed. Now you have that functional data, and your journey, your process is living off of that prediction engine, and it can see it and make good decisions based on actual user data, actual model data. That's saying these people are more likely to churn or less likely to churn or more likely to buy and move forward. So you can really focus on the people who matter. And sales can focus on, a smaller group of really engaged folks who want to move forward or think about it harder. So in conclusion, Marketo does PLG. Um, and if you're thinking about switching or you're thinking about how do I leverage Marketo better for PLG, right? It's an orchestration engine, right? Invest in that process and technology layer before going any farther, right? Proof of concept, like we talked about earlier, is a really great way, right? There's a lot of options to deliver the right kind of journey, the right kind of data to the right places at the right time. One of the things Marketo did really invest in over the years is a great API, right? Whether it doesn't matter which program you're using, the data system, the APIs, the AI, they're all using APIs in some way, right? So there's a lot of opportunity there to plug things in. And you can really orchestrate those journeys and see it in one place rather than disconnected silos and teams driving different aspects of the journey. And of course, a key part of that is orchestrating your data. If you want to orchestrate, you want to separate out data orchestration, which of those parts? I mean, I think like I said earlier, like if you want to start orchestrating data, you can do that anytime, right? You're probably already using some amount of data syncs across systems. They just might not be in a single pane of glass, for example. They might have been built up over time to support different use cases, and that's where I would, you know, look at those. I would look at, how can I pull in that user data and trigger a campaign in Marketo, for example. That's where I would just try to do a POC.
Josh, what's the hardest part about I imagine a lot of people that join today, or just a lot of people work backwards. They have a product that's kind of landed to the executive level, like as I alluded to. What is the hardest part of them going backwards and trying to think like, oh, if I just had a freemium product that people grew up with, like, where does that tend to go wrong as they plan in their workshop and data they're capturing?
Someone's going up market, for example, or
Let me rephrase. So in the case of even I'll use Openprise, for example, selling to a lot of enterprise companies, then trying to put in a PLG motion where you have two separate products. Where's the common fault that people miss in the journey they should be creating or the data they need to capture? Because it's a different experience.
yeah, I think the key part is not thinking through the whole process and the whole experience, right? And what do I mean by that? Your example is a good one, right? Where you sign up for something and some automation matches you to the existing domains and an existing account, and it starts, and I get this from some companies like, hey, did you know you already had a license? I'm your salesperson. I'm like, okay, great. I didn't know that, but why are you contacting me? I'm not the owner of the account. Um, right? I don't understand the implications of clicking here. Then I might get a call from somebody who said, "Why are you spending money with?" Right? Um, so thinking through that, like that experience, is really important. Um, working with all of the different teams because often the product team owns portions of this journey and the implementations team. And for whatever reason, those grew up separately, right? No one thought to have a holistic conversation. Um, that's usually where I see the disconnect the most, and then you see complaints from various people that something's not working, and it's because you guys didn't talk to each other and really map out the whole process.
Yeah. What teams are all involved in this? And what I mean is like MOP, SOP, so forth. Like, who do you have to have buy-in to do this right? Because there's clearly a lot of data, tech stack.
I mean, everybody, every company is a little bit different, right? I try to view marketing operations or DTM operations almost as an internal consultant to say, hey, I see we're having a challenge. You guys are saying this, we're not getting the right experience. Let's get together and talk about the end-to-end process for product-led growth for single users or each segment, and work with the marketer, the lifecycle team, like you said, SOPs, the sales leadership, whoever owns that number, and walk through what it should really look like and what those outcomes should really look like. And are we capturing the right data as we go through this? Are we automating the right steps? Where are people going to get confused, and how can we help them move forward through um, the sign up process, or using and taking advantage of the product? And so even the product team, the data team need to get involved, and you need to bring them together to do that.
Awesome. So last question for you. What's the key, if I had to start tomorrow on this, or I already have something going, what's the key takeaway that you would want me to have?
Uh, One, anything is possible with technology. The question is, what do you want it to do?
Got it. All right. Let me check if there's any more questions from the group.
Not seeing any in the Q&A section right now, but again, we are always here to answer any questions that you have, especially on our topic that we covered here today. So if we aren't seeing anything come through, you can always raise your hand to speak as well if you kind of want to get more engaged in the content and the conversation. But if not, we can actually go ahead and let folks hop off for today. Appreciate everyone hopping on and participating in our conversation. All right, we have two questions that popped up. Perfect. We have a question here from Eric Rex. What is Openprise's unique offering in the context of today's topic?
Awesome. Well, and really in the context of this is our data orchestration approach that's going to support broader than PLG, but in collaborating with Josh and understanding how his approach is to this to make Marketo use what it's strongest at, it is having us on our ability to aggregate to multiple systems, position it for whether you're sending to Marketo, sending it to HubSpot, other systems, so that you can make this PLG journey that people are looking for.
Awesome. Thank you, Eric, for your question. All right. If nothing else, okay. We have a question here. I joined late. Do we have a go-to-market motion or framework slide?
Yes, we do. There's this version, and there's this version, depending on what you like.
Workflow or table style. Well,
Let's
lovely.
see. Oh, this is the other one that I like that kind of unifies the technology. Yes, but in the recording, we can talk about it, but you really do, again, start from the beginning. What's your service model look like? What's your experience for the user and internally? Where are those handoff points, and what technology should really drive that?
Awesome. Thank you for the questions. And again, I know we answered this as a typed out for someone else's question, but we will be sending out links to all the recordings and such that'll be hosted on our website in the next day or two after we get everything processed and buttoned up. But you'll be able to kind of, scrub through this however you need to find what you need. But you can also always reach out to us. We, we'll pass any questions along to the team if you want to do any kind of written discourse after as well. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining today. Appreciate it. Again, we'll be getting that follow-up email out here. So have a wonderful rest of your Thursday, and we'll look forward to talking to you soon.
Thanks, everyone.